Let's talk about facial recognition and its ethical implications.
Have you noticed that facial recognition is everywhere?
Scotland Yard says facial recognition cameras will be vital in
Look at it, and it recognizes you.
Grocery shopping, you may not realize what is watching you.
These sensors have also become a lot more intelligent. They're able to identify moving objects, all of which makes the data much, much richer. Your life can be rewound and your secrets can be revealed.
As of 2024, we are seeing facial recognition finding itself as a staple feature in everyday life and the devices we use. With the rise in data and technological intelligence, tech companies are constantly looking for the safest ways to protect our own personal devices and our data security. But is it all with good intent? In this video, I'm going to explore some of the ethical concerns surrounding the practice of facial recognition and whether its so-called security is worth the price society may have already paid in its 50+ years of existence. One of the earliest cases of facial recognition development was in a research experiment in 1964 led by Woodrow Bledsoe in the Silicon Valley in California. Utilizing a rudimentary scanner to map hairline, face, eyes and nose shapes, they used a volunteer sample to see whether a computer could match the mapped points of the features of these images within two images of the same person. Despite the computer learning the feature points of the photos and translating them to binary code, technological limitations of the time meant that the computers were unsuccessful in matching the photos. As Woodrow commented, this recognition problem is made difficult by the great variability in head rotation and tilt, lighting intensity and angle, facial expression, aging, etc., highlighting how facial recognition is a mean feat of technological advancement. In terms of its role in the judicial and criminal system, as of 1993, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency and the Army Research Laboratory established the Face Recognition Technology Program, codenamed FERRET, to develop automatic face recognition capabilities. The motivation behind this being that it would be a tool that could identify targets through algorithms rather than humans having to manually do it themselves. And it was only in 1999 when Minnesota incorporated facial recognition systems titled Face IT into a mugshot booking system that allowed justice forces to track criminals across the state. This was a significant moment in facial recognition history, as this use of surveillance mediation is still present today and is one of the main issues that protesters have against it, which I shall get into later. In terms of commercial use, Kelly Gates highlights in her book Our Biometric Future how in 1997 the DMV in America began using facial recognition against driving license to prevent users getting multiple licenses or licenses under false aliases. As of 2017, Apple released Face ID, a facial recognition feature used when you unlock your iPhone, working via a Romeo model that projects more than 30,000 infrared dots onto the user's face, and a Juliet model that reads the pattern. However, people were wary upon release just how safe this technology is when protecting their iPhones, as well as what it meant to have their facial data stored somewhere unknowingly. The Verge reports how Apple came straight out to say that the pattern is sent to a local secure enclave in the device's central processing unit to confirm a match with the phone owner's face. The facial pattern is not accessible by Apple. However, users are more than justified to have their queries about facial recognition, as the use of it isn't always transparent. This was found in February 2021, where TikTok agreed to a $92 million settlement to a US lawsuit which alleged that the app had used facial recognition in both user videos and its algorithm to identify age, gender, and ethnicity, to tailor the content more to the person and increase the engagement with the app. And that's not the only concern with facial recognition. The technology itself has a history of being racially biased. 3 gender classification algorithms, including those developed by IBM and Microsoft, were appraised by the groundbreaking 2018 Gender Shades Project.
Hi, I'm Joy, and I research how computers detect, recognize, and classify people's faces. The system I was using worked well on my lighter-skinned friend's face, but when it came to detecting my face, it didn't do so well, until I put on a white mask.
All 3 algorithms performed the worst on darker skinned females, with error rates up to 34% higher than for lighter skinned males. This was backed up by an independent assessment by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, where they found that face recognition technologies across 189 algorithms were least accurate on women of colour, which is alarming when this technology is being used to protect data or to identify criminal behaviour, where there should be no disparity or discrimination, or else it may lead to greater issues or people being wrongly charged. Following on from my earlier point, lack of informed consent and transparency is another major issue when it comes to facial recognition. This was backed up when scientists at Washington-based Microsoft Research Center amassed the world's largest dataset containing nearly 10 million images of 100,000 people, including musicians, journalists, and academics, that were all taken from the internet. And in 2019, Berlin-based artist Adam Harvey's website called Megapixels highlighted how these datasets had been amassed through profiles on social media, which had not necessarily consented to being used in order to create these datasets and therefore make this facial recognition technology. Mass surveillance and facial recognition infringes on citizens' inherent right to be under constant government surveillance and keep their images without consent. As ZDNet reported in 2021, 51 digital rights organisations called for a blanket ban on all facial recognition tools for mass surveillance. This is also supported by the fact that more than 43,000 European citizens signed a Reclaim Your Face petition calling for a ban on all biometric mass surveillance practices in the EU, highlighting how people aren't comfortable being documented, tracked, and having their facial data stored without their consent. Another area of worry around facial recognition is the fact that the law can simply not keep up with the technological advancements. This is also the case in the ineffective legal support against data breaches. This means it feels like this large spread rollout is dangerous without the legal infrastructure to regulate its misuses or infringements on human rights. This unrest in the power of facial recognition has been causing a big stir amongst society, as well as evident in the technological prejudice, leading to a pushback of resilience in many different forms. An example of this would be the Umbrella movement in Hong Kong back in 2019, where police were using surveillance and facial recognition to identify and charge protesters who were simply protesting against their human right violations. This led to protesters using face masks and umbrellas to hide their identity from CCTV and smartphone facial recognition tech. This then led to Chinese platforms such as Taobao and AliExpress to stop offering umbrellas for sale back in 2019, which feels scarily dystopian when protesting is a basic human right. The rise of AI and synthetic media, for example deepfakes, could also cause a major issue in regards to facial recognition, as technology may not be advanced enough yet to differentiate between what's real and what's fake. And if this is in turn being used by the judicial system, it could cause major issues and again lead to people being wrongly charged or wrongly detained. And as a study by Sarkar et al. Found in 2022, the higher the security of the facial recognition system, the more susceptible it is to data morphing, which is the practice of using deepfakes to trick the facial recognition systems. IBM and Amazon are examples of companies that are being very wary about how they're distributing their facial recognition technologies these days, as they are wary that it could get in the wrong hands. One major recent event was the announcement from Meta that Facebook would no longer be using facial recognition technologies on their platform, claiming that it is to delete about 1 billion face prints that it used as part of its facial recognition system for photo tagging, citing concerns that with the technology an insufficient legal system. Makeup is another medium that is being used to disorientate facial recognition systems. For example, there is many people out there who are coining the phrase CV dazzle, where they will paint their faces in a certain way to obscure the features points that facial recognition looks out for example the forehead, eyes, mouth and nose. But facial recognition isn't going anywhere anytime soon. The worldwide market for face recognition technologies is estimated to exceed $19.3 billion in 2032. And with this I have to make sure that not all facial recognition technology is bad. For example, one of the biggest upsides of facial recognition technology is the convenience and speed that it can offer. This in turn has boosted the economy by the speed of payment. Using face to pay as a method to tap to pay shows how the rate of transactions are actually quicker. Zhu et al. In 2023 found that in a study that transactions take an average of 29 seconds versus 40 seconds when paying with a physical credit or debit card. The researchers found that customers charged 9.4% more on average to their credit cards, both online and in person, after they started making mobile payments, which means that they also made more purchases. It can also lead to convenience in terms of everyday life, with personal assistants like Siri and Alexa and Cortana knowing more what you want and what you need immediately. Facial recognition could also potentially help to fight hacking, as there can be a verification system that the person logging into the account is actually who they say they are. Despite its current state, there is still hope that facial recognition can be used ethically and implemented into society more naturally and transparently. One example being that before the inclusion of biometrics in a facial recognition database, institutions should ensure that citizens are provided with information on their right to inform and express their consent. Equally, in order to determine an individual's skin colour, race, religion, national origin, gender, age, or disability, facial recognition systems should not be used, as this is deterministic and has a history of being problematic, as previously discussed. In terms of disclosure, without the express written consent of the data subject, it should not be possible to trade or disseminate the result of a biometric identification system. Citizens should also have right to access, edit, and delete their facial data, in addition to a record of any changes made to this information. Equally, in relation to data security and data protection, organisations that host publicly available records relating to an individual's identity should take proactive measures and appropriate controls to prevent their misuse from building a facial print database. Some measures including restricting automated access to sensitive databases and contractually requiring partners to adhere to ethical usage guidelines. Organisations may grant the government access to confidential information under the Data Protection Act 1974 or upon receipt of a probable cause warrant. Organisations must also define policies for compliance and use of data while offering the necessary technical measures to verify accountability. I feel like the main concern with facial recognition is the fact that people don't know exactly what it is being used for, as well as how their data is being stored and what other people are doing with their data. I hope I've made it clear here about my stance on the ethical implications of facial recognition, and also have offered you an insight into how it could be implemented in a more ethical way. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.